they become more confident, which is really a great thing, especially with middle schoolers, because in middle school, you're so concerned about all the social that it's hard to jump in and do the things.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success.
As a parent, you have lots of hopes for your kid. Of course, happiness and health, but you also want them to be the kind of adult who knows how to problem solve, recover from failures, and take initiative. But how do you get there when your kid has selective hearing? My next guests are leveraging a school elective that makes creative problem solving into a competition. They are part of the Ferry Middle School's Odyssey of the Mind program, where 7 out of 8 of their teams advance to the state level. Odyssey of the Mind is an international program designed to help students grow as confident learners and team members. Today, they're going to share 5 benefits it brings in and out of the classroom, combining interest and passions, leveraging teamwork and individual gifts. Melissa Hughes, Cheri Stoker, and Sophia Worley. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Melissa, you're the regional coaches representative for the board of directors for Odyssey. That's a long title. Can you please paint a picture of what Odyssey looks like in the schools?
Odyssey is a creative problem-solving thing. So we're teaching things like brainstorming and teamwork. And once they get used to working together, how to conflict productively. So basically, when you sit down and you have a difference of opinion, how do you express that without putting the other person down and still manage to do it? Because if you can't ever raise your objections to an idea, you're not going to get a better idea. A lot of what we do is kind of follows the engineering design process or the design process where they come up with an idea and then they start brainstorming ways to solve it. And then they try something or throw out an idea and then they build it and it doesn't work the way they expected it to. And so then they modify it to try and get it closer to their ideal. And then they might go back to the drawing board because they realize that even though it does what they wanted it to, they could come up with something even better. And it's interesting because the first couple of times they're doing it, a lot of times it takes them a month or two to create their first thing because they're so afraid that they're going to fail. But then they make it and it fails spectacularly. And they're like, oh, and they're like, well, what do I do now? It failed. And it's like, okay, how are you going to fix it? And they're like, wait, we can fix things? And it's that idea that what they create isn't the end point. That first project is not it. We don't give them a grade and stop. You get to go back and make it better. And it creates a whole different mindset because then they're not afraid to grab materials, throw something together and try it because they know that even if it doesn't work the way, they're going to get a chance to fix it. They're going to get a chance to improve it, and they're going to be able to bounce back from it. And they start to learn from their mistakes, and they start to build on that, and they start to really create something that is impressive and is phenomenal, and they become more confident, which is really a great thing, especially with middle schoolers, because in middle school, you're so concerned about all the social that it's hard to jump in and do the things.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. How does it fit into the curriculum? Is it an after-school program? Is it an elective class that they're attending?
Yes, both.
Oh, okay.
We have an elective class, and then we also have the after-school component where because basically they're on a team of 7. So there are the general things like the brainstorming and the paperwork and the things like that we go over, and we get them familiar with their problems and we teach them different skills. And then they take it and they do things beyond the classroom. And what you really need when you're working on something like that is a good chunk of time that you can work. And with classes only being 45, 50 minutes, the after school, we tend to have in the beginning at 1 practice a week, and sometimes they go to more. But it's usually a chunk of 2 to 2.5 hours. So they have a big chunk of time. So if they start a project, they don't have to stop midstream. Because there are some of the projects that once you get into them, you can't really stop until you finish it. If you're in the middle of constructing something and putting it and, attaching different things, you might have to finish the thing you're putting together because if you stop, it might fall apart. And so, yeah, they need that longer chunk of time. Plus, it gives them a chance to work in a room with just the 7 of them and not have all of the other teams with all of the other noise and chaos. And so it lets them kind of focus. It also gives them individual attention. I've been really blessed at Ferry Pass because we have a lot of teachers who are passionate about the program. And I honestly blame that almost entirely on Cheri Stoker because she is the most wonderful person on the planet. She is very nurturing, very caring, very warm. She pulls everyone together. And so as a result, there have been a lot of teachers who have been willing to help and who have been willing to do the thing. And because of that, every team has somebody who's working with them so they get that individual attention, even if they're all meeting at the same time. And that's really phenomenal.
Well, good job, Cheri, for making it look like something people want to be a part of. And actually, that leads us to our very first benefit, which is practicing collaboration. So you're the Odyssey sponsor at Ferry Pass.
Yes.
And a 7th grade science teacher.
Yes.
And a parent
yes.
of an Odyssey kid. So I feel like you have a really good perspective. But what does learning and practicing collaboration look like in middle schoolers?
Well, with Odyssey specifically, they're working with a group of 7. They're creating their solution to their problem all together. They have to come up with their own props, their scripts. Ultimately, they do an 8-minute performance. They also have a competition factor where they have to compete in a spontaneous problem, where they go in a room with just them and they are given a problem right on the spot and they have to solve it together. But just it's all about collaboration and working together and coming up with creative solutions.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, Sophia, you're an Odyssey student, and the second benefit of Odyssey is learning how to fail. But as a student, I'm pretty sure that was my number one thing to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So what does learning how to fail mean in Odyssey? And what's been your experience with it?
Last year, the second year I did it, we were trying to figure out a backdrop to use or something. And so we had a plan where, we're going to make this big cardboard trifold. And we spent, weeks on it, and it didn't work. So, and then we're like, okay, that's fine. Let's make another one. And it did work. So, instead of focusing on, oh, it failed. Wow, what are we going to do? We're like, okay, it's fine. We tried something, it didn't work. Now we know not to use that. And now we have something even better to use.
Did it freak you out at first, though, that you had spent weeks on it and it didn't work?
Yeah. We were trying to figure out, how to reuse some of the stuff because we spent so much time on it. But we got over it and we ended up winning with the thing that we made. So
You won with the thing that you made?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a big turnaround. Has your changed perspective on failure impacted you outside of Odyssey? Has it helped you in any other area of your life?
Yeah. Even just everyday things, if something doesn't work out or if something doesn't go my way, something or anything, I'm just like, oh, it's okay, because then I'll find something better.
Oh, because then I'll win the championship.
Exactly.
This is just my setup. Wow, that's kind of a big deal to be able to learn that now and not have to, struggle to learn it later.
Yeah.
Melissa, the third Odyssey benefit is initiative. And I feel like that would be hard to teach, is it?
It really is. You can't really, there are several of the skills in Odyssey that you can't really teach explicitly. They have to kind of experience it and see how it happens. In terms of initiative, one of the big things that exists in Odyssey is there's a rule against outside help, which means the adults can't help them solve the problem. We can't suggest how they solve it. We can't help them make the things. We can teach them skills outside of it. So, for example, if they wanted to learn how to use a sewing machine or if they wanted to learn how to use, a piece of machinery, we could teach them how to do the thing, but not onto the project, and then they could take it and apply it wherever it was. And so what happens is they're having to come up with those solutions. And similarly to the failure, at first, it's a little intimidating because you have to come up with the solutions. And a lot of times when you're in middle school, you haven't had a lot of things that you've had to come up with the solution entirely yourself on. You've had that adult help, especially when you're a sixth grader, you're just coming into middle school. You've had, and so, and it's a funny age because in middle school, they feel like they should be able to control things and they should be able to be independent. But a lot of them aren't quite ready for it initially, or they're hesitant to do it, and so it really is a point where, well, this is entirely up to you kids. And I might be here as an adult, but I can't help you with this. I can ask questions that are open-ended, and I can teach you a skill if you want me to teach it to you. And I can give you 10 different ways you could do it, but ultimately you have to decide how you're going to approach this and how you're going to fix it and start it, or it's not going to get done.
You started Odyssey 14 years ago here, right?
Yeah. I started it, at that time I was at the Pat Center. And I had been at the Pat Center for about a year, and it surprised me because having been a gifted kid, I remembered we would have projects and we would immediately dive in and we would do the things and we would try the things and we would use whatever was there. And when I first started at Pat's, I started to put the projects out there, and the kids would go, "Well, how exactly do you want us to do this? Well, what do you want us to use? Well," and I was like, what? And I was trying to figure out something. And then also we were losing middle schoolers. They would say, "Oh, well, I did the same thing in elementary school, so why do I want to continue this?" And so it wasn't meeting whatever it was they were looking for. And my husband competed in Odyssey in Virginia back when he was in high school. And 20 years later, he was able to tell me every single thing he did to solve the problem. And for a gifted kid to remember something in that much detail that they did 20 years before was huge. And so I was like, well, if this had that much of an impact on him, maybe it's something that would fit the kids well. And I looked into it and found out that there was a region that included Pensacola. Pensacola just didn't have any teens, but Pensacola is part of the Emerald Coast region, which is kind of centered in Okaloosa County because it extends all the way from here to beyond Panama City. And so I contacted the people and said, "Hey, can we do a thing?" And it turned out there was a lady holding a coach's training in Santa Rosa County. And so I was able to go one county over and kind of learn how the thing worked. And we were like, okay, well, we're going to try it. And I thought I was going to have one team and taught the class. And we ended up with 5 and one in each problem. And the kids really got into it. And the parents got involved. And when I was there, most of the coaches were parents. And so it also gave them a chance to be involved in what their kids were doing in a way that was, they weren't stepping on their toes because the kids had to come up with everything themselves, but they could still be a part of everything, which, that's a big transition for parents from elementary to middle school to suddenly not be able to not really have all the volunteer opportunities that you have in elementary school when you're up there every week.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about, how we're like 5 benefits. I didn't even think about benefits for parents. You're totally right, because sorry, parents, I didn't think about you. I was just thinking about the student benefit. But that taking initiative piece, speaking of parents, Cheri, is an important one. I want to know, though, does that translate it at home? Because, you hear parents talk about, "Oh my gosh, why does the kid not see the sock on the floor? They could just pick it up." Well, you didn't tell me to pick it up. Well, it's on the floor. Pick it up. So is that working? Is that translating in the house?
Somewhat, I guess. I know that my children personally who've been in it, they definitely are better at solving problems. I don't know that they're better at recognizing a sock on the floor.
Okay, that's fair.
But yes, and I will say they have lifelong friends that they still talk to each other, the people that they've been on a team with for multiple years. And yeah, it's definitely, I think, made them better people.
The other benefit is helping kids learn how to think, not what to think. But I'm curious, because this is a team setting, right?
Right.
And when you're in a team setting, you're thinking about the thoughts of others, the team. What does the team think? And so is it harder to teach students how to think and not what to think when you are working within a team atmosphere?
Possibly. I mean, they tend to brainstorm a lot together, so they think a lot together.
One thing I've tried to do when I've worked with teams is I've tried to have it where a different kid is in charge of each thing. So, for example, this might be the kid who's the leader for the costumes, and this might be the kid who's the leader for the script, and this might be the kid. And base it on where they're interested in working. Usually we ask them, and then, but just kind of say, okay, well, you're in charge for this and you're in charge for this. And the goal is for everybody to be the leader in something so that they know that they're ultimately responsible for that thing. But it also means that they might speak up more if they know that that's their area. And so there are some things like that organizationally that you can do and say, hey, why don't you take the lead on this since you're into it? Or, oh, you have a lot of ideas on this. Why don't you take the lead on that? And kind of nurture little leaders in the different things. But because they're leading those areas, they're more encouraged to speak up and they feel empowered. And another thing that I try and make sure of, and I tell them, you're going to be disappointed if it's not there, is that everybody's created something that goes on that they use for the thing as much as possible. Because if everybody's created something, then they're more invested and they feel more involved. But again, it's taking initiative. So it's baby steps. When they first start out in 6th grade, they may contribute. They may not do as much. I had one little girl one year who spent her entire 6th grade year with her nose stuck in a book. And we weren't sure she was going to continue with it because she would start reading whenever she had a break. And we weren't sure she was that into what we were doing. And then the next year, she completely turned around. So she was learning everything that was going on. She just didn't quite know what to do. And her default when she didn't know what to do was to read a book. But it turned out she really was paying attention. She really was into it. She just wasn't quite sure what to do as a 6th grader. So sometimes they grow gradually and you're really surprised because over the summer, suddenly they go from that to, oh my goodness, they're doing all the things.
Wow. I'm really starting to see the picture is coming together for me because I'm starting to see how initiative overlaps with collaboration and collaboration overlaps with finding your own, space in what you think and not just doing what other people think, because they not just have the collaboration, they also have authority and different. Okay, y'all are doing a great job. I think it's starting to click. So Sophia, our last benefit is creativity. Here's a question, though. Do you really think creativity can be taught?
Yes, you can definitely learn it because I have. I mean, 6th grade year was it was still good, but I think I've learned how to be more creative and try and think more outside of the box the more I've been in Odyssey. And my whole team this year with 8th graders, most of us had done it before. I just remember it was one of our first practices and we were like, okay, so what are we going to do, guys, for our problem? And we just sat down and started listening to music from a movie. And it was really weird, but we were listening to Descendants music. And then we started talking about, oh, have y'all played that video game? And that's kind of how we got our idea for our whole Odyssey thing, because we're like, hey, what if we made a video game play? And that's just kind of how it started. And I think that if we hadn't learned how to think outside of the box, we probably wouldn't have made that big of a connection.
I mean, what you're describing is a startup think tank, which is so cool, because you're valuing not just the hustle, you're also valuing the pause. And you're in that pause, you're finding inspiration. And how special is that you get to do that and y'all are killing it. You're winning things. That's amazing.
I do want to say her rock band was the best rock band that I've ever seen. They were so good. It was so original and they were awesome.
They made a rock band?
Yes, with original songs and original instruments and
Wait, original instruments?
Yes. Yeah. Not all their instruments were original.
And not only that, but their original instrument was hidden in the backdrop. So they ended up pulling it down at one point. And I'm like, where did that come from?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Wild.
I want to attend the show.
Now, I have a question for you, Sophia.
Yes.
So your 8th grade year, some of you were people who had done it all 3 years. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of people who had done it too. And then you had a couple of new people in it. Could you see the difference between the people who had done it all 3 years and the people who were coming in new in 8th grade?
Kind of. I mean, to the start, the people that had done it before were more outgoing and oh, let's do this, let's do that. I have new ideas. And then the people that hadn't done it before were yeah, okay, we'll just go along with that. But then towards the end of the year, they started making their own ideas or having more leadership, I I guess, and kind of just realizing, oh, I can say these things and they'll listen to me. And yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Melissa, what do you feel like people misunderstand about Odyssey of the Mind?
I think the hardest thing is because there are so many different pieces and parts of it. There are some people who will watch a performance and go, oh, it's a drama program. There are other people who look at it and say, oh, well, you're doing engineering. That's what it is. And it's really, there are little pieces of all of it. I've commented before that like Science Olympiad is STEM, Odyssey is STEAM. Because it incorporates, you have to do it in an 8-minute performance. You have to solve the problem, which usually involves some sort of engineering or putting together. Even if you're on a theatrical problem, they had to build a musical instrument that was functional, even though theirs was a performance problem. And so, there are all of these different components. They have a limited budget. They have to come up with everything themselves. And there really is there's not one set thing that you can go, oh, well, this is the same thing as that, because there are so many different pieces. And you have to solve a problem when you go to competition. There's a little 10-minute problem and everything is there, and you have to pretty much sit down and in 10 minutes brainstorm and solve the problem. For example, I actually just got back from judging at World, and the problem that they were doing was a hands-on problem where they were given materials. They set out 15 cones with holes in the top, and the kids had to come up with a way of creating a chain that would go through the holes in the different things out of straws or yarn or rubber bands or paper plates, or, they had a collection of materials. They had to come up with how to use those to make that chain, and were scored on how many cones it connected and how creative their ideas were and everything else, which, by the way, I couldn't have talked about this if we weren't done with World, because you're not allowed to talk about any of the kids can't talk about the spontaneous problems till after World Finals, because they use these problems in different regional tournaments and different state tournaments around, the different areas. And so, however, since World is over, but that's what they did in the room. And they had 8 minutes to do it.
That's incredible.
So,
so
they had to go from brainstorming to solution and do all the things in 8 minutes.
I mean, there's kind of an element of improv there. I mean,
Yes.
It's problem solving, but you also have to make people care about what you've done, which is sales, by the way. So there's so many layers to these benefits. I'm so glad that y'all came on and talked about this. Sophia, if a student is listening to this and thinking, oh, I don't really want to sign up for more homework, how would you respond? Why should they give it a second thought?
Well, one, I wouldn't really call it homework. It's kind of, it's kind of like it's school, but it's not. It's like your own thing. It's not a set thing. Like you're like, okay, you have to write this essay. You have to make this project. You get to actually do what you want to do, which is something that I don't think most teachers like. I mean, obviously but
that's not really part of like the traditional school curriculum.
Yeah.
You have to follow the curriculum. And every student, I think, whether you're in middle school, high school, or you're in university, you think, oh man, I wish I could like really dive into the subject because I'm into it. And this is like you diving in.
Yes. Like you can be like, oh, I really like blah, blah, blah. And then focus on that instead of having to do a different thing that you're like, okay, whatever. I don't really like that. But I think it's your version of school or your version of homework.
I like that. That's really cool. Where can parents go? What website, what link, if they want to learn more about Odyssey of the Mind? And can they request it to be in their school?
Yes. You can request that it go to a school. The hardest thing with getting it in a new school is finding that teacher or that person who is willing to work with the teams. And if you can find that teacher or teachers, and then it's usually not hard to get a program started. Well, the national site or the world site is www.odysseyofthemind.com. We also, for our region, it's emeraldcoastodyssey.org. And that gives the information about the thing. And if you look on there, I'm one of the coaches' representatives, Melissa Hughes. And if they send me an email, we can talk, we can come out and show it. In addition, July 20th, they are going to be having a summer spontaneous event at Shoal River Middle School in Okaloosa County. The information about it is on the website, or again, if they send me an email, I can send them the information. But it's That one, they're going to just pull in whatever kids want to attend, and they're going to put them on teams and let them try it out. So if a parent would like their kid to try out the things and see what it's like, it's about a 2-hour event where they can come in and kind of try out the different things and see what it's like and see what it is. In terms of starting a program, you can start a program as part of a school. You can start a program as part of a community group and just kind of pull together a group of students and start a team. My older son wanted to do Odyssey in high school, and none of the high schools in the area had it. And so he talked a teacher into being the sponsor, and they did it for 1 year. But then after that, that teacher ended up moving to another school. And so they talked one of the parents into coaching a team for them, and they put together a team, and they basically just split the cost between the 7 kids, and they put it together, and they got, I believe, the local Star Trek group, the USS Continuum, to put their name behind the team. And so they were the USS Continuum Odyssey team, and they went forward and they did their whole problem with that name.
I mean, basically for that team, the problem solving started when they were like, we need a team. How can we get a team? I love it. Thank you, ladies, so much. This has been really cool. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.